Good to have you with us this morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. We are going to begin this Tuesday morning, with a first look at voter sentiment toward the second Trump administration.
Key elections are taking place in 2 states. Wisconsin voters are set to pick up a new state Supreme Court judge. It's a race that saw tens of millions of dollars spent on TV advertising. President Trump's White House advisor, billionaire Elon Musk, and his super PAC are playing a major role in that uptick in spending in the Wisconsin race.
Meanwhile, in the state of Florida, voters will choose replacements in congressional seats vacated by Trump administration appointments. NBC News Chief Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles has more on what's at stake in these races.
Hey, Joe and Savannah, good morning. And this is really, in many ways, the first test for Donald Trump since he was sworn into office. Voters going to the polls in special elections in both Wisconsin and in Florida. In Wisconsin, it's a race for the state Supreme Court. And this is an important race because these judges have a lot of influence over a number of important issues within the state, but specifically the state election maps. And we've seen Elon Musk go all in on this race. He and his associated groups have spent somewhere in the range of $20 million. And Musk, of course, very controversially, gave away 2 $1 million prizes to supporters of his preferred candidate, who also have signed a petition saying that they're going to fight against activist judges. Now, that's led this race in Wisconsin to be somewhat of a referendum on both Donald Trump and Elon Musk and the way that his administration has conducted itself since he was sworn into office back in January. Now, in Florida, it's a little bit different of a situation because now we're talking about 2 special elections for seats in Congress. Now, these are very red districts. One district in particular, the district that was left vacant by Mike Waltz, who, of course, is the national security advisor, is a seat that Donald Trump won by 30 points. But polls show that could be potentially close. The Democrats have raised a lot more money, and there's the potential that that race could fall within single digits. Now, that would still be a win for Republicans, but Democrats say this is an example of how Donald Trump's policies are not resonating with average Americans, and they believe it should send a warning to Donald Trump and Elon Musk and Republicans in Washington that they need to change course. We'll have to see how this plays out tonight. Joe and Savannah.
All right, Ryan, thank you. Well, the influence of Elon Musk has put the Wisconsin Supreme Court race in the national spotlight. NBC News correspondent Shaquille Brewster has more on how voters in the state are feeling about the race and the impact the White House is having on this election.
Elon Musk.
What do you think of my hat?
At the center of a contentious Wisconsin Supreme Court race that's turned into the first statewide voter test of the anti-Musk messaging from Democrats.
Now Elon Musk is trying to buy Schimmel a seat on the Supreme Court.
Drawing protests and a spotlight on the trail.
He's trying to buy the election.
Musk flying in Sunday night to hand out $1 million checks to signers of his petition.
This is one of those things that may not seem that it's going to affect the entire destiny of humanity, but I think it will.
What it will affect is control of Wisconsin's highest court. Republican-endorsed Judge Brad Schimmel is facing Judge Susan Crawford, who is backed by Democrats.
Save our state and save our nation on April 1st.
This is about the future of our state Supreme Court.
Home to President Donald Trump's most narrow 2024 victory, this is the most expensive state Supreme Court campaign in U.S. history. More than $80 million in spending by candidates and outside groups, according to an NBC News analysis of public records, including at least $12 million from Musk's super PAC.
You mentioned Elon Musk a lot.
Elon Musk.
Never dreamed I'd be fighting against the richest man in the world for justice in Wisconsin.
You said this is a campaign essentially against Elon Musk that you're fighting.
Well, it sure feels like it some days.
Beyond the flurry of X posts, Musk has been heavily involved. His group offered voters $100 to sign a petition to oppose, quote, activist judges. In 2023, liberals took control of the court for the first time in 15 years. The new majority signaled support for abortion rights and struck down Republican-drawn state legislative maps. National Republicans, fearing Wisconsin's congressional maps and the narrow U.S. House majority they helped create, will be next. In ads,
Trump has endorsed Brad Schimmel in the race for Wisconsin Supreme Court.
And at events, Schimmel embraces President Trump, but wasn't on stage with Musk
I don't control what Elon Musk does.
Pushing back on the attack that the billionaire is buying his influence or hurting his chances.
Has it become a distraction for you?
Only with the media and only with the protesters who are obsessed with it. That's it.
But Democrats here, led by party chair Ben Wickler, are closing with a big focus on Musk.
If Susan Crawford can beat Elon Musk and Brad Schimmel, it should really open the question of whether Republicans can politically survive if Elon Musk is their front guy.
Testing a new line of attack here in Wisconsin, the tightest battleground state in the nation. Shaquille Brewster, NBC News.
Businesses and consumers are bracing for what President Trump is calling his big Liberation Day announcement. Tomorrow, the president plans to unveil a sweeping set of reciprocal tariffs on imported goods from other countries. How many countries? Well, it's unclear right now. These are likely nations that have their own duties on U.S. goods. The announcement comes on the heels of a 25% tariff the president already issued for all foreign-made cars and auto parts. That goes into effect on Thursday. Well, the president says consumers can dodge any potential impact to prices by buying American-made cars. Well, auto industry experts say there's one problem with that. There aren't any vehicles entirely built in the U.S. On the market front, yesterday, U.S. stocks closed out their worst quarter in more than 2 years. Anxious investors are keeping a close eye on Mr. Trump's trade policy, which has been rolling out in starts and stops. NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung joins us now with a closer look. He is at Millennium Honda in Hempstead, New York. Brian, good to have you with us. So we'll get into the market reaction in a minute, but can you explain this idea that there really is no such thing as a fully American-made car?
Yeah, good morning, Joe, from this Honda dealership here on Long Island. Now, it is indeed the case that, of course, for Japanese vehicles like these, not, a good portion of the chunk of those cars are made in the United States or in North America. However, it is worth noting that even for American-branded cars, just because it has a GM or a Chevy logo in front of it or a Ford logo doesn't necessarily mean that all the parts inside that vehicle are made in the United States. In fact, in many cases, a lot of those parts are coming from Canada or coming from Mexico. They'll actually cross the border multiple times before getting back into your car, which means every time it crosses the border under that 25% tariff, which will take effect later on this week, it'll be added onto that cost, which could get passed down to the customer as well. In fact, I was just on the phone yesterday with a Canadian parts manufacturer that was saying for the same part that he sells to an automaker like GM, again, an American automaker, it'll get tariffed 25%. 4 times, because that's how many times it crosses the border between Windsor, Ontario, and Detroit, Michigan. So again, it's just a reminder that there's no American car that's 100% made in the United States.
So, Brian, I know it's early. You'll be speaking with people at that car dealership later today, but let's talk now about how tariffs could affect not just car prices, but also, I would guess, car sales. I mean, could we see demand go up for used cars?
Yeah, well, we've been talking about this estimate from Goldman Sachs. A lot of these Wall Street banks are projecting the direct impact on a vehicle for foreign imports, like, for example, these Hondas. Goldman Sachs is warning that costs could go up per car by as much as $15,000. But for the reasons that I just mentioned in that last question, even domestic vehicles could go up in price as well, somewhere between $3,000 to $8,000, depending on what vehicle you're looking at. So, again, those costs will go down to the consumer. And to your point, Joe, if the prices are higher, does that mean that the sales volumes come down as people balk at those higher prices for new cars? Economists that I've been speaking to in the past few weeks have also mentioned that used car prices could go up as well, even though those cars are already made. The reason why? Because people that don't choose to buy new cars then try to buy used cars. That can make prices go up.
There you go, supply and demand. Let's talk about Wall Street. We mentioned earlier U.S. stocks took a major hit in the first quarter, which is now officially over. How bad was the start of the year, and do we even have an idea of where things could go from here?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was a brutal way to start the year, especially when you consider that actually into the first few weeks of this year, it looked like we were going to be off to a rocket start. Markets were trading higher, and then things really tilted down in the beginning of February as the tariff war started to ratchet up. You could see those stats ahead of you. The NASDAQ down over 10% just in the first 3 months of this year. Again, those are tech-heavy stocks that are in that index. But the S&P 500, since President Trump's inauguration, is down roughly about 7%, and yet underscoring the concerns that Wall Street traders have, as well as those on Main Street, about what these tariff impacts will be. And with this tariff war far from over, the reciprocal tariffs haven't even been announced yet. We don't even know what that looks like. We'll see what the announcement is from the Rose Garden tomorrow. But that means that the turmoil on Wall Street might be far from over, Joe.
All right. Brian Chung, thank you so much.
Well, let's get more reaction to these incoming tariffs with NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Melanie Zanona. Mel, good morning. So we understand several Republican lawmakers even are concerned about what seems to be a looming trade war. Among them is House Agriculture Committee Chair Glenn Thompson. What are we hearing from him and others about all this?
Yeah, there is a lot of nervousness among Republicans on Capitol Hill about the idea of a prolonged trade war, particularly from Republicans who represent agriculture-heavy states. So Chairman Thompson being one of them. I caught up with him yesterday, and he said he's already asked for some exemptions from the White House from these tariffs for some goods that are particularly important to the agriculture industry, including fertilizer and peat moss. Meanwhile, other top Republicans like Tom Cole, who is the chairman of the House Appropriations Committee, said there are farmers in his state who are very worried about how all of this is going to play out. Now, most Republicans have been very careful not to break too much with Donald Trump on this issue, but we could see perhaps their biggest rebuke yet in the Senate later today. And that is because there's a Democratic senator who is planning to force a vote on a resolution that would essentially block the across-the-board tariffs that Trump is planning to institute on Canada. And as of right now, it looks like there could be enough Republicans to join with Democrats to succeed in that effort. We're hearing that Susan Collins, Tom Tillis, and Rand Paul are all on board with blocking these tariffs. Now, this would largely be symbolic because, of course, this resolution would die in the House. But nonetheless, it would be a huge public rebuke of President Donald Trump here.
Absolutely. Mel, I also want to ask you about the fact that congressional Republicans even are downplaying President Trump's talk of a third term. We talked about this yesterday, but as a reminder, he told our Kristen Welker that he had not ruled that out, that there were methods to achieve it. What are lawmakers saying about this?
Yeah, most Republicans that we talked to yesterday were really downplaying these comments. In fact, most of them told us repeatedly that Trump is just joking or it was tongue-in-cheek, despite the fact that Trump himself told Kristen that he was not joking on this matter and that he was exploring different methods to actually make this work. But most Republicans on Capitol Hill said they have no appetite to change the Constitution, that there are no proposals currently in the works in order to allow Trump to serve to a third term. But there is at least one Republican who is taking it seriously, and that's Andy Ogles, a member of the House Freedom Caucus. He has introduced a resolution that would allow Trump, but only Trump, to serve for a third term. However, as of right now, there are only one co-sponsor, himself, on that resolution.
Mel, also last night, we saw the first legal challenges. This is to an executive order President Trump signed last week. So it aims to overhaul elections by requiring people to prove their citizenship when they register to vote. Then we saw the DNC and Democratic congressional leaders, nonprofit groups filing these complaints. What are they arguing?
Yeah, so broadly speaking, this lawsuit alleges that Donald Trump is essentially stepping out of bounds when it comes to his power and infringing on Congress's rights. But specifically, they say that these executive orders are in violation of the Privacy Act, and also that the requirements would be very onerous and essentially prone to errors because these federal databases often are not up to date. But this is just the latest wave of litigation against Donald Trump, and it's also the latest example of how Democratic leadership in Congress is really leaning into some of these legal tools to stand up to Donald Trump, as in the minority, they are essentially powerless to stand up to him right now.
All right, Melanie Zanona, thank you very much.
Tens of millions of people are under the threat of severe weather this morning. A powerful storm system is making its way through the Midwest today. It's expected to bring large hail, could even produce a few tornadoes.
Yeah, this latest system comes as people across the country are still cleaning up from the last storm system that spawned several possible tornadoes, like what you're looking at here. This is at a school in Alabama, which was hit, injuring several students. That same system knocked out electricity to tens of thousands of people around Michigan, Wisconsin, and Indiana. And now this morning, crews are busy trying to restore power to those areas. Let's take a closer look at how all the severe weather could impact your area.
Meteorologist Angie Lastman joins us now with the forecast. Angie, good morning.
Hi, guys. Good morning to you. We are gearing up for another busy week. Severe weather, wintry weather, all included in this. And we've got some winter alerts already up for parts of the upper Midwest and folks across parts of the Rockies and some of the mountainous regions across the West. Here's the deal of how this all kind of shapes up. Late into the day today, we could see potentially some of these thunderstorms firing up across the plains. It's a smaller area, but still the chance for severe weather is there. And then notice this wintry weather that's really stretched from the northern plains all the way to the Great Lakes. That's going to make travel a little difficult and iffy for folks in that region. The severe risk today, Kansas City, Wichita, Oklahoma City, stretching down south into parts of Texas, including San Angelo. That's where it'll mainly be focused. This does include the potential for some tornadoes. Those will be likely, but the hail, the wind gusts are all on the table as well. This is the area that we're going to look for those larger tornadoes. So Wichita, Stillwater, Independence, all included in that, EF2s or higher. And this happens late into the day today, specifically evening hours and overnight hours. That will be on the table. As we head into tomorrow, this kind of ramps up. So once again, thunderstorms developing, focused for tomorrow from the plains to essentially the Midwest. We'll see again the potential for some severe weather, and we'll see that difficult travel lasting across the northern tier of the country with the snow and the ice still on the table. The severe weather for tomorrow includes a much bigger region. We've got essentially Michigan to Texas included in that, and major cities, Dallas, Shreveport, Little Rock, St. Louis, Chicago, Detroit, all included in that. And this is going to have those tornadoes, of course, and also the wind gusts up to 75 miles per hour, as well as the damaging hail. This is the area that we're watching for when it comes to the tornado risk. Remember, some of those could be strong, EF2 or higher. That does include Little Rock, Memphis, Evansville, and up into Cincinnati and Indianapolis. So a second day of that severe weather. And we're not done with it just yet. Even when we get to Thursday, that severe risk will linger. As we get into Thursday, though, it'll be Texas to Pennsylvania that kind of sees some of that. Now, we'll also have a risk of flooding with this. This is going to be something that we'll likely see be a heavy rain event. The flood potential mainly focused across this region. We've already got 22 million people that are impacted by this, and this is going to last those alerts until Sunday. We likely will see some of these flash flood warnings coming as this system kind of stalls over the Mississippi Valley as we get into Thursday. This means that you've just got all this moisture kind of hanging out in that same region. This eventually will move east by Sunday night, and we'll be watching for the potential for flash flooding, specifically tomorrow through Sunday, to be fairly widespread. This also means that river flooding will be something we see lasting across that region. And when it's all said and done, we could have, some pretty impressive rainfall totals. As far as the storm in whole, over 15 inches is going to be possible in some of these locations. Evansville, Poplar Bluff, Little Rock are kind of in the bullseye of that. But we could see some locations across this region seeing anywhere from 5 to 8 inches of rain in one single day. Guys, we know that doesn't take, we don't even need that much rain to see flooding across that region. So we'll be concerned about this. Again, a multi kind of threat system and multi-day system that we're going to see well into the weekend across much of the east.
All right, we know you'll keep an eye on it, Angie. Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app, or follow us on social media.